and is being recorded. So everybody please be kind to each other, have arguments, but no name calling. And today is an information session and there are no decisions being made. So by all means ask questions, but we're not making decisions today. So let's proceed with what we need to proceed with, the staff report.
I can't hear it. Can I start the name calling by saying that Greg Mitchell's a really good guy?
Have we got staff on? Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Are you ready to go? Sorry,
yes, let's go.
You all froze. I will share my screen, I hope. Right, I hope you have some pictures in front of you.
I see a main slide.
Great, okay. Greetings everybody, my name's Mari Gordon. I'm in the Parks Planning team in Council, and I'm joined by Tina Weston and Sally Ann Marshall from the Transportation team. And we are here to have a conversation around commercial activities on coastal reserves. We're going to cover a couple of things, one being the influence of the Reserves Act on this question. Also, we'll talk about how we use the policies as they currently stand when applications are made. And we'll talk about how other public spaces in the district are occupied and how that policy piece works. The question has been raised through an operator of a mobile sauna business coming to Waihora Community Board, I think it was in March this year, earlier this year anyway, and asking that their business be supported to be located in the Sumner area. And the application had been made through council staff and had been declined, along with 8 others with the same idea, not necessarily owning the facility, but certainly having the ambition to set their business up in the coastal area. Most wanted to be focused in the Sumner Beach area. And all the applications were considered and declined in the same vein. They didn't all come in at the same time. They drip fed over that 12-month period. The mobile sauna business is growing in New Zealand. It's certainly quite a trend at present, and there are a number of mobile sauna businesses established on public land right around the country. You can look at the internet and see for yourself that is so and where they are. They're set up on reserves, on parks, on road, but also set up on private property and in sort of co-location situations. So an example of that in Wanaka is a lakeside campground has a mobile sauna business that's part of a franchise set up, and that seems to be quite a comfortable marriage of the two types of businesses on that particular property. In Christchurch district, we already do have public sauna facilities available to the community through our aquatic services network, under the guise that our applicants have been promoting around that health wellness piece, but they are public sauna saunas available within the district as it currently stands. We'll get more into how these applications were determined to be not fitting in a moment. So I guess first and foremost, the decisions to locate activities on public open space that are subject to the Reserves Act are measured across a whole range of things, but the Reserves Act really does guide what is okay and what is not okay in a public realm on reserve, and it certainly limits commercial activities by virtue of the fact that any activity that happens on a reserve needs to fit really nicely with the type of reserve that it is. And reserves can be classified in a number of different ways. Historic, they could be local purpose, where we have community halls, for example, and they can be recreation. But I think this afternoon we're just really going to talk about the coastal environment, because that has triggered the question, and I suggest in our response to you about how you might change the situation, that will still be the focus. When we get an application and they're ad hoc, they're unsolicited, they could come at any time through the year, and they could be to do a whole range of different things. And we've had dog wash requests, easements, mobile saunas, requests to be able to sell food on parks and sell services on parks. The place we start in terms of what do we do next is critique the request to occupy land against council's policy structure. And it's not one policy. When I say policy structure, it includes reserve management plans, our guidelines around unsolicited proposals, specific master plans. We look at how bylaws accommodate activities, how the leasing policy, for example, fits. And I guess the other element that we give attention to is the operational effects of an activity being granted permission to operate on a site. And that permission is not something that we give, that's something that community boards give, but we can test that activity on the site from an operational point of view. So in the coastal environment, we have a number of in situ tenants, so yacht clubs, we have surf clubs, we have those are the main ones that I can think of, and they have certain needs in order to deliver the service they're there to do. We also have a number of reserve management plans that guide our response to the request. Reserve management plans are a key connection to the Reserves Act. They provide policy which is only binding to council, but it does guide the answers to those questions when people say, can we put our commercial business in this particular reserve? And where that policy in the reserve management plan says that it wouldn't fit, and we have to make that assessment, then the response is declined. Where a particular operation would influence quite heavily the ability for the public to enjoy a space. So if it's heavily used, particularly seasonally, bringing in businesses or structures or items that restrict or constrict that ability for the public to enjoy the open space for its purpose, which in most cases along the coastal strip is for recreation, then it's not a good fit either. So it's really important that we align the values and the values that the particular reserve gives us and the purpose of the land with the ability to maintain our requirement to provide for public enjoyment and access to open spaces. And sometimes when we overload spaces with structures, with activities, with events, with businesses, then that has an impact on the community. So that's the principles, and that's even without asking anybody for their opinion on these things. The other thing too, I guess, that we think about is, are there other opportunities for these businesses to establish in other locations that aren't public land and be equally as successful or available to the public, or those kinds of things. And as I've mentioned, we have public sauna available for community use or community hire, and we have opportunities for businesses to seek other types of land to operate. However, sometimes a commercial entity can provide an experience, contribute to the offering that an open space might make. And we'll all be familiar with high demand public spaces where people go there to be entertained in summer, for example, and being able to buy an ice cream or learn to paddleboard or other similar things that I can't think of right now, but they contribute to that experience, but in the way that the land is supposed to be managed. So those are the types of things we're thinking about when we receive a request. If they don't fit, this sounds very blunt, but if they don't fit, it's typically declined. If there's a potential fit, because we've always been looking for one of these things and here we have it, or actually it does align with the values from the reserve management plan or the leasing policy or the master plan for that particular part of the district, then we would pick that up and move it through to community board consideration, and it won't get into the rest of the process, but that's where we start to come into you guys to test it with you before it even goes anywhere near the public. That's broadly speaking how we deal with the reserve applications. Sally Ann and Tina are going to just give some context around how other spaces are occupied for commercial businesses. So I'll hand over to them.
Yeah, hi everybody. Sorry, I was trying to get my camera to work, but I've failed. So you'll just have to listen to me. Sorry. Anyway, so yeah, the legal road, that's land vested in council over which the public has a right of way or passage. Our priorities for the use of the road reserve are for the safe and efficient use of the network for all users, and this would include us prioritising user movements and minimising obstructions. When considering assigning that space to commercial activities. The fee's simple. I think my understanding of this is that it's land held by the council, but it's not designated as a park or a reserve, so it isn't bound by the rules and regulations that will go along with that. This means that commercial activities could potentially be carried out here with more easily than it could be in, say, a park or a reserve. Then the public places bylaw as a tool. So this bylaw provides us it provides the regulation for trading in public places, and trading being defined as an activity that is undertaken for payment or reward. Sitting within this, we've got our trading and events policy. This gives us principles that guide decisions and outcomes for commercial activity applications. This is, however, it's aimed more at mobile traders rather than businesses that might want to return to the same space again and again. So yeah, like ice cream vans moving around and that kind of thing would fit more within the trading and events policy. But we have also got our traffic and parking bylaw, and this allows us by resolution to prescribe restrictions that we can apply to parking places, such as times or specific users. This was the mechanism that we used quite recently for the surf schools in Sumner, where we resolved there's times and seasonal variations when they're allowed to use certain spaces. And that's the mechanism that would have been used for the various leased food truck sites that we've got across the city as well. It's me.
Thanks, Sal. I'll take over here.
Nice.
So one of the other kind of ways or policies that people have kind of approached transport with where this could potentially fit under is what we call the structures on the street. But one of the issues with this or limitations is that the use and the way that you use and implement structures on the road, not the street, pardon me, is usually by putting things like stock underpasses in, which we've done recently once in Banks Peninsula, or putting garages on for residential properties such as Littleton, Mount Pleasant and such. One of the big issues with using the structures on the road policy is that it's only intended for private use, and it's not intended to make any revenue opportunities. Most of the time when we use it, it's to help provide access into properties. So it's another kind of limitation where it wouldn't be appropriate for saunas to be in this way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and just to perhaps bring some sunshine to the conversation rather than the rain, some thoughts around how some change could be brought about, and that's it's not showing you. There we are. So one of the thoughts we've had is that perhaps if boards were to consider commercial activities on reserves within your respective areas, then a schedule of locations and sort of some criteria and the types of services that might be appropriate to those locations be put to the market, because clearly there is a market for mobile saunas. We've had 9 parties wanting to set themselves up, unfortunately almost all in the same place, but maybe there's an opportunity to add some value to the offering that we make, like, as a destination. This Sumner Beach is a summer, well, it's a year-round destination, but it could add to the value that destination offers the community. So thinking more broadly about across the district and saying, where else could we offer commercial activities on reserves with certain criteria around perhaps what type, the time of year, the types of activities, the how we might minimize impacts or what have you, and put that to the market and see what the response is, put that to the community and see what the response is, and then have more ability to say yes than we're currently doing, which is more about no, it doesn't fit, because we haven't, I guess, got all the doors open to brand new ideas and initiatives in terms of how we manage reserves. We will never get away from needing to align perhaps our decisions with the values and the public enjoyment and access criteria, but it would be a more constructive way to provide opportunities that meet those needs, meet community needs, and then move forward along the same vein that Sally Ann described to you just now. That's our suggestion in terms of answering that question we've been posed. And if you have questions, feel free.
I'll start with the questions. One of the things I'm aware of is that during the single fin mingle, my understanding is that a sauna operated for a short period on the Esplanade. I heard it secondhand. I didn't see it myself. But
Yes.
you know, how was that permitted? Did it go through a process? Was it
Yes.
part of just that event? How did that?
Yeah, the latter point. It was part of an event, and the event gave permission to the types of activities and offerings that were going to be made on that particular day in that particular place. So that's how that was approved.
Thank you. I see, Celeste, you have your hand up. Would you like to?
Yes. So I've got my camera off, but thanks for that. It was interesting. I just got a quick question around the process. If one of the ways to say a group wants to establish a commercial operation in a reserve, and the reserve management plan doesn't get updated for 20 years, is the best process, because I understand that would make sense to do it as part of that process if that's happening, but given those plans take a while, and generally with commercial operations, they're kind of sort of a timeliness thing needed.
Mm-hmm.
What did you say that the best first step for those groups that are looking to sort of perhaps present their case would be to present it to the community board, test it out, and then go from there?
So I guess there's 2 avenues. One is make the application through the portal on the council website, and staff deal with it within the current parameters, and how that concept proceeds is kind of locked into that process. Or they could attend, as you say, as you've just outlined, to a community board and make a case. They're irrespective of the path that a party might take to effectively speak to the decision makers. The process around considering an idea that a reserve management plan doesn't accommodate, and that does happen as reserve management plans age or things change in the universe. The path is almost the same as when we get an application that does proceed, and that is that it gets presented to the community board with generally a full assessment of what the party is wanting to have happen. And it's the same for community requests as it is for commercial. And the community board considers whether it would support the idea being put out to the community to give their feedback on. and that feedback then influences the next step, which is a decision on whether or not that is acceptable and shall proceed to a tenancy, a lease. That process works, like I say, whether it's a community project or a council project. So, for example, Ngā Punawai, the parks base that's been constructed there and the turf farm weren't factored into the reserve management plan when it was prepared. So it's a brand new day, brand new idea. It goes to the community board to consider whether there's support. It goes out to the community for opinion. It's heard and a decision is made as to whether or not they will proceed. In this case, it's proceeding, and approval is given. So that's the path a proposal that isn't supported in any fashion in a policy structure, including reserve management plan, would take.
Thank you. That was a very clear explanation. Can I just ask a quick follow-up to that?
Yes.
Does it apply if, say, because I was of the understanding that a reserve sometimes has an outright prohibition on certain things. For example, there's an outright prohibition on freedom camping in a reserve. Is that correct? So if you wanted to enable something that was not allowed,
yes,
could the community board allow it?
They need to allow. They can. Sorry, get my words in the right order. Permission, approval can be given, but the key is that the approval is a reflection of the restrictions of the Reserves Act. So if something's a little bit iffy, it's a measure of does it meet the principles of the Reserves Act? Does it contribute to public enjoyment? Does it contribute to the values of that site? So, for example, really ridiculous, but it's just demonstrate that what you wouldn't do. You have a historic reserve and a community group says, I want to put my go-kart facility on the historic reserve because look, it's all flat and it would be wonderful. The values associated with being a historic reserve and the effects of being a motorized sport would not be a perfect marriage. So, like, once again, it's a ridiculous example, but it's just to demonstrate the thinking that needs to go into whether something aligns with the principles and values of the principles of the Reserves Act and the principles that you accommodate in your policies and reserve management plans, or whether it doesn't. And there might be a better place to direct them.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions, people? I've got one more, but we'll just let anyone else want to ask something. No hands are appearing. So it seems to me, if I've got it right, what we have here is a situation where several businesses have approached council and been told no. The alternative option is that the community boards can assess whether they think it would be appropriate to have a business of a particular sort in a particular type of reserve. Yes. And if so, then approach council to see if that's okay. And if it is okay, then people could be, an invitation to apply could be put out.
Yes.
Is that what we're talking about?
With a few steps.
And just one extra is, I can imagine a board could consider a single reserve or a few spaces quite quickly, but to consider all of the spaces, etc., within a board would take an extraordinarily long time.
Yes, correct. In terms of your first point,
yep,
there would be a little, when I say a little, it would take a little bit of time, a lot of time really, to determine the spaces that you'd like to see these activities take place on. And so you're right, that's enormous, and perhaps you might like just to focus onto key spaces where you know there is keen public interest in activities. Perhaps I think put a destination management hat on it and say, all these people come to this place in our district or in our ward because it's whatever, let's say it's the beach, and we could make that visitation a whole lot more enjoyable if we just enabled something, whatever that is.
Yeah.
But I think so that process needs to take the time to assess against all the reasons why that's not okay, in order to argue why it would be okay. And then you can use that in your conversation with the community around why this might be a good idea. And at the same time, run that procurement process, because clearly there's a market for mobile sauna operators, albeit only one, to my understanding, actually owned a unit. The rest were sort of teasing the idea out. But that would be a contestable process that said, okay, this is the party we choose to do this on these grounds, and it fits right back to it's a good thing for the reserve and it's a good thing for public enjoyment.
Thank you. Anybody else want to raise any issues, ask any questions, float any ideas? Nope. Are we done then? It looks like we are.
Tim,
Yeah, hello.
I've got experts in the room. I heard a reference to the public places bylaw. Is that something that sort of we can just briefly ask a question about now, or is that outside of the scope of this entirely?
I'll go for it. We're ready.
It's something that I don't fully understand, the public places bylaw, but has come up in sort of a side issue around things around freedom camping. Do you know when that is up for review? And is it something that because at the moment it seems like it's one of those bylaws that for certain types of activities it doesn't have a lot of teeth, I guess you could say. So if, say, someone was obstructing, they set up they're obstructing a public pathway, there isn't a lot of scope within that particular bylaw to do anything. Have I got that correct? It has been a bit confusing, some of those different elements.
On a park, the Parks and Reserves bylaw applies, and it definitely makes provision for dealing with obstructions, bad behaviours, people doing the wrong thing in the wrong place. I'm just looking up the public places bylaw, but if
I can help answer part of your question. So the public places bylaw will be up for review starting 2026, and then that review process will take 2 years, and then will look to be completed in 2028. So the standard bylaw review period, I believe, is between 2 to 3 years, but I think it will most likely either be end of this year or starting next year, but it will be ready to go for 2028. So that will be coming up for review soon.
Okay, and when you say that the standard timeline, is that for how long it takes to review it?
Yeah, so that's standard for all of our bylaws within.
Okay.
So that's within our policy team. So there's always a couple of years of kind of transition and making sure that we're kind of meeting community needs and all of that stuff, just so that we're not, just quickly kind of whipping it up together. So yeah, it's usually I believe 2 to 3 years per bylaw. Yeah.
Oh wow, thank you. It's interesting.
Has that covered that one?
Yes, thank you.
I see Yanni has a hand up. Yanni?
Oh, thank you. So, I mean, just kind of related to that wider issue, and if it's not appropriate for tonight, that's fine. But one of the things I've noticed is that, especially for a number of events and businesses, they're putting up a lot of illegal signage. And so I guess I'm just mindful that there's a process around, there's consideration of allowing the activity, but then there also seems to be a real gap in the regulations or the enforcement compliance around the advertising of the activity. And I'm just wondering if staff have had any thoughts about what additional measures may be needed to make sure that people are being compliant if we do give approval for activities to go into a number of these sensitive, some of these, particularly in the coastal area, are quite sensitive landscapes.
In my experience, and it's not strongly based in Christchurch, the terms and conditions of the license or the lease put restrictions around it. So mobile sauna, from what I've seen online, it's not just about the trailer unit, and typically they are on trailers. It's also about their wood piles of firewood and all the towels hanging around the place, and yes, signage, and the size of groups that mingle and what have you and gather around them. That could be something that the license or lease puts limits on, and probably should, alongside hours of use and time of year and all the rest of it. But in my experience in other places, the operational people are typically on the case. They really own their coastal strip and they really want to see it preserved and protected, but also really positively used. So if the license says one sandwich board or one flag or whatever, then they're the ones that are proactive and enabled to go and have conversations with people that put up all sorts of things, including painted vehicles and banners and hand flyers around the beach and what have you. It's not a perfect science, but I think that operational ownership of the space really does help in that situation.
We seem to have a particular problem in Christchurch where we don't really, I mean, we've got sensitive sites around rivers, for example, which are polluted with signage, advertising signage all the time, and often for years on end, the same event year after year. So maybe we could talk to the regulatory people just to make sure that whatever wording is put in place, doesn't mean that people have to suffer and repeatedly raise complaints time and time again, year after year.
Right. I don't know if it's within the realms of what we're talking about today, but is it something that, are they permanent tenants? And that's where the signage...
So it's like for events, for example, there might be events that are enabled, like one-off events or
I see.
a number of days in public space. Often we're funding these events as council. They often have temporary traffic management plans, but I mean, I'm really supportive of the mobile saunas. But I'm just mindful if there's other activities that, I guess, or activities that do get a bit out of control in terms of advertising along those special environments, and there needs to be something that's put in place. Yeah, but thank you. It's really interesting to get a briefing on this. Thanks.
Anybody else got anything they wish to raise? No. Okay. Well, I shall declare the meeting over. Are we happy with that? Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And for your contribution.
Thank you. Really
Thank you.
interesting.
See you.
Interesting. Bye.
Bye.